Welcome to our Explore Your Shore World Oceans Day webinar. Now, the idea of this webinar today is it's on YouTube, and the concept there is that you can dip in and out of this as and when it suits you. You can watch the whole thing through in one go, or you can dip in and out as the opportunity arises during the day. We're going to be demonstrating some of our Explore Your Shore surveys just very briefly, but the main focus today is on our partner surveys. All of those other biodiversity, citizen science projects going on around the country that you can participate in. And we've got some excellent speakers joining us today to highlight their citizen science projects for you this World Oceans Day. So make yourself comfortable, make a cup of tea, settle down and enjoy the show. Snap. Now, it really is as easy as that. Probably the best way to get involved in Explore Your Shore and in biodiversity recording is to start off simply. Bring your camera, bring your smartphone to the shore, and while you're out doing whatever you're doing, bring your camera along, take those pictures, do your best to identify them, and then submit them online to our Seashore Spotter survey. Our Seashore Spotter survey is designed to collect casual records from any marine species at all, anywhere around the coastline. Take those shots, submit them to us, they'll get validated, and then once validated they'll add to the Explore Your Shore data set and improve our understanding of species distribution around the Irish coastline. So it's a great way to get started. You've nothing to lose, nothing to be scared of. Give it a go and don't be afraid of getting things wrong, because as I say, every record is validated. As long as you submit a picture, we can validate your record, so you can rest at ease that your data is being put to good use. So with Seashore Spotter, it's really easy to record something that you find on the seashore. However, what if you're walking along the coast and you see something else? Something a lot more active, something a lot bigger, something out at sea. Well, if you're lucky enough to be walking along the coast and spot something blubbery, let's say a whale or a dolphin or a porpoise, then who are you going to call? Well, the answer is you're going to report it to our survey partners at the Irish Whale and Dolphin Group. For 30 years now, the Irish Whale and Dolphin Group have been recording whales, dolphins and porpoises using citizen science around the Irish coastline. They record sightings and they record strandings. And the team from the IWDD joins us now to explain what their citizen science programme is all about and how you can take part.
Welcome to the Irish Whale and Dolphin Group. Our mission is the conservation and better understanding of whales, dolphins and porpoises in Irish waters through study, education and interpretation.
We coordinate all Ireland's stranding and sighting schemes to learn what species occur where and when. This helps us to develop conservation policies and strategies, but also to help people go out and see these magnificent creatures in Irish waters for themselves.
We run a research vessel, Celtic Mist, for our members to sail on and learn how to identify and record whales, dolphins and porpoises in Ireland.
Our local groups are made up of lots of different people with a shared passion for whales and dolphins in Ireland and the oceans. We run many long-term projects, including the Shannon Dolphins and Whale Track Ireland.
Our work is also international. We have travelled to Iceland and Cabo Verde as we share whale populations with these island nations.
Our consulting wing provides specialist services to inform management and industry and generates income to support our work.
The island of Ireland is only 10% of the whole of Ireland. The other 90% is a marine environment and home to some of the most amazing marine wildlife in the world.
Hi, one of the main jobs of the Irish Whale and Dolphin Group is to coordinate the Irish cetacean whales, dolphins on porpoise sighting scheme. And this scheme is essentially open to everybody. We have the kind of two aspects of it. We have the casual sighting scheme, which is designed for opportunistic sightings made by members of the public who happen to be out doing something else. They're walking or swimming or fishing or sailing, or just by the coast, and they happen to have an opportunistic sighting of a whale or a dolphin or a harbour porpoise, and they report it to the Irish Whale and Dolphin Group. We also have the constant effort sighting scheme, which is perhaps more for the keen enthusiast who wants to learn more and who wants to spend more time watching from a local headland, where they're also recording their effort, which is generally the numbers of minutes watched. So it just requires a little bit more sort of time and a little bit more effort, if you like, on behalf of the observer. But both schemes are open to members of the public, citizen scientists, who report their sightings to us. And over the years, many things have changed. For instance, back, when we started back in the early 1990s, we asked people to fill in a hard copy sheet, and they went out to the post office and they put a postage stamp on it and they posted us the hard copy forms. That was in the 1990s. Then in the 2000s, we went online. We were one of the first NGOs to have real-time online recording of sightings data with validation that people could actually interrogate online. So we kind of led the way in that. And then in the last couple of weeks, we've had the launch of our fantastic new reporting app. So it's really just a new tool that does essentially the exact same thing that the hard copy sheets did back almost 30 years ago, but it just does it in a more user-friendly way that's in keeping with how we use sort of social media and reporting and mobile devices. The data, obviously, we collect an awful lot of data every year. This is looking like a really good year. We possibly have, well over 2,000 validated cetacean sighting records this year. And that data is all fed to the National Biodiversity Data Centre down in Waterford. And they do a range of things with it, from producing a variety of publications to their fantastic mammal atlases. And the Irish Whale and Dolphin Group would be one of the key providers of sightings data, validated sightings data, to the Biodiversity Data Centre. It's also used for conservation management purposes and to help conservation managers and industry make good decisions about the health of our marine environment. So everybody can get involved. And it's a fantastic way to, if you like, to turn a conversation piece into a conservation piece by reporting it to us in a standardized format, so IWDG can validate that record and put it to good use.
Hi, my name is Stephanie and I'm the steering officer for the Irish Whale and Dolphin Group. So that's the second scheme that we run. And it is also run by citizen scientists. So people walking along the shores, if they come across a dead animal, a dead whale, dolphin, or porpoise, they will report that to me. And what I do then is I look at the photographs and I look at the location, and we have a great network of volunteers around the country. So if they're free, then they'll go over to that animal, get additional photographs to help with species identification, so we can try to establish the gender, but also to look if there are any unusual markings. So we might try to establish the cause of death. So then all this also, as Pork said, gets placed into the database, and all of this data can be accessed to look and see if there are any patterns, unusual mortality events, and things like that. So thank you so much to all the citizen scientists out there that make these stranding and sighting schemes possible. And here's to a good few more years collaborating with the National Biodiversity Data Centre.
Good news today for whales and dolphins, and good news for citizen scientists in Ireland. We're launching the Irish Whale and Dolphin Group reporting app for iPhone users and Android. It's taken us a while.
It has. It's been developed by Compass Informatics, who are world leaders in biological recording, and funded through the Clare Local Development Programme funded by LEADER. So it's taken a long time for us to get here, but at last, ta-da, it's ready for action.
Many of you will already be familiar with reporting your sightings and strandings on our website on iwdd.ie, but the app makes it much, much easier.
Yeah, I do find it quite difficult to remember what I've done if I'd be doing a watch or found a stranding, so to have it all online, in your hand, ready to go is brilliant. All the fields are the same as people are familiar with, so it should be a smooth transition from the website to the mobile phone.
And Simon, you had mentioned to me before that the really nice thing about it is that you can actually enter the details, enter your sighting on site, out in the cliff, out in the headland.
Yeah, and I like about it is that the signal back here can be quite unpredictable, so you can log all your sightings, all your effort, all your images on the phone, and then when you get into some kind of coverage, it's sent off. And what's a really nice thing about the app is that it's interfaced with the database, so the records go straight in the database, ready for validation, and then up on the website. So it should be really smooth. And I suppose the testing has taken a long time because it's actually a far more complicated system than it seems. To the user, it'll be seamless, but the back end took a lot of work. So to work with Compass, who really know what they're doing, and is brilliant. We're very lucky to have them involved.
It's very reassuring, and of course that back end system was there already because this isn't a new thing for reporting records for the IWDG. This has been going for years. The app is new. The recording isn't new.
It has, and to be honest, we actually have developed a number of apps over the years, but they just weren't really fit for purpose. It just didn't quite do everything. So it's fantastic that we've actually now got an app that's is going to revolutionise in some ways our recording. We would expect to see a big increase, certainly in sightings and effort watches, and everything goes onto your phone now. So another app to squeeze in amongst all the other apps. And we're delighted to be releasing this app during Biodiversity Week, when the citizen scientists of Ireland will be out on headlands and cliffs and coasts all around Ireland recording our brilliant marine wildlife.
Perfect timing.
So thanks to the IWDG for explaining what their citizen science projects are all about. If you have any questions or queries for them, just leave them in the comments section below this video and we'll get them to respond to those during the week, and you'll find the answers in the comments section, so keep checking back. So this week we're looking at the Big Beach Biodiversity Survey. We've gotten lucky with the weather again. The sun is shining. The tide is out, which is always the best time to do a Big Beach Biodiversity Survey. And the concept of the survey is quite simple. Basically, we're going to walk a section of beach for 20 to 30 minutes, count everything that we find in terms of seashells, seaweeds, etc. and calculate how many shells per hour, let's say, for example, we find. That gives us some estimate of abundance, which makes this data more valuable than just casual records. So let's have a look along the high water mark and see what we can find. So when you're taking an identification image, it's important for bivalve shells that we get an image of both the exterior of the shell and the interior, which shows details like the paleosinus and the colours and details of the ribs of the shell. So if you can find two halves of a shell of the same species, then display them like this. And the other important piece of a identification image is some scale. So there's a ruler supplied on the back of the identification swatch for this purpose. So frame your shell halves in the same image along with the scale, and then take your shot. So one of our most frequently recorded groups of animals are the jellyfish. They rank up there with the seals and with cetaceans, and people record them probably because they're quite noticeable while they're out at sea. They're not stinging you, at least they're blobbing around in the water beside you. And you also find them washed up on shore, and you're likely to record them during the Big Beach Biodiversity Survey. So how should you go about recording jellyfish when you do sight them? Well, The Big Jellyfish Hunt has been run by Tom Doyle at University College Cork for some years now, and it's one of our partner projects. You'll find a link to it on the Explore Your Shore website, and Tom joins us now to explain a little bit more about the project.
Hello, my name is Dr. Tom Doyle and I'm from University College Cork, and I'm here to give you an introduction to the Big Jellyfish Hunt Facebook page. So what is it? Well, it's a Facebook page and it can be found at facebook.com/ecogel. The tag Ecogel is there because it was part of a project called the Ecogel project, which is about managing the opportunities and impacts of jellyfish in the Irish Sea, which started in 2008. But since then, the Facebook page has grown and we now have over 5,000 followers of the page, so it gets quite a lot of attention, and it has the very broad aim of collecting jellyfish observations from beach walkers, swimmers, divers and boat users, and from anyone really. So why collect jellyfish observations? Well, first of all, they can directly impact on our economy, so these are economically important species. So I just have a picture here of somebody who was stung by a jellyfish. So some species of our jellyfish can give very painful stings and can even cause people to be hospitalized. We've some jellyfish species which can impact on the salmon aquaculture industry, so they can cause large fish kills. So it's really important that we understand what's the timing of those species and when they occur. And then there's some species of jellyfish that feed on fish eggs and fish larvae. So it's really important that we understand the distribution of jellyfish and the diet of different types of jellyfish to see how they're impacting on our fisheries, which we depend on. But jellyfish are also a natural part of our coastal seas. So the Big Jellyfish Hunt Facebook page, we don't focus on the negative side of jellyfish. Of course, jellyfish sting, but they also play hugely important and beneficial roles in our ecosystems. So they're natural parts of our ecosystems. And this is a really nice picture here of a compass jellyfish with some fish that are aggregated around the jellyfish. So jellyfish can act as nurseries for juvenile fish species. So while in the previous slide we showed that jellyfish can have a negative impact, they can also have a positive impact and act as nurseries to protect these juvenile fish from larger predatory fish from consuming them. And of course, jellyfish are an important food source for many different animals as well. So here we have a picture of a leatherback sea turtle feeding on a barrel jellyfish, or Rhizostoma octopus. And this is something that happens in Irish waters too. So we regularly see leatherback sea turtles in our waters, and they do feed on our abundant supply of jellyfish. So jellyfish are very important for these very large and charismatic sea turtle species. But of course, there's a lot of other species of animals that feed on jellyfish too, including sunfish, but also there's hundreds of species of fish are now known to feed on jellyfish, and many seabirds feed on jellyfish too. But jellyfish, and this is a very unusual type of jellyfish here, this is called an appendicularian, but these are really, really small, what we call gelatinous zooplankton, and they play very important roles in our systems as well, because some fish species have to eat these appendicularians to develop properly. So jellyfish are really important in our marine ecosystems. But not only are they important, but because of their unusual shape and the form spectacular blooms, the beautiful colours that they sometimes have, including this blue jellyfish here, then the unusual morphology of this barrel jellyfish and the size of it, these can be up to 30 kg, and then the large swarms of or blooms of jellyfish that we get, and of course the venomous nature of these species. Jellyfish inspire us. They really capture our imagination and make us want to learn more about them. So how can you help? Well, really what we're looking for are jellyfish sightings. So the easy thing is just to report your sightings. So what types of observations are we looking for? Well, the most obvious observation we're looking for are beach strandings. So if you're walking a beach, if you regularly walk a beach, whether it's once a week or several times a week, it'd be fantastic if you were to report on the Big Jellyfish Hunt Facebook page the type of jellyfish you see on our beaches. So here's a moon jellyfish, and you can see just washed up on a beach here. So this is really important information that we want to gather. So what type of jellyfish wash up on what beach? But we're also very interested in diving observations. So divers, you're hugely important, and because you're in the water and you dive all around our coastal seas, you sometimes see stuff that we don't see, you know, because you're spending, you know, 30-40 minutes in the water. So when you see a jellyfish and you get some nice pictures, do send them on as well. So these can be really important to show us at what depth jellyfish are observed at. We're also interested in observations from open water swimmers. So if you're, you know, here's a fantastic picture from Newell Moore, who was swimming down off Dingle and saw this lion's mane jellyfish. And what you can see from this picture is how the tentacles are spread out almost like an exploding star. So, you know, it shows us how these animals are feeding. So this is a really nice observation. But we're also interested in jellyfish observations from, whether it's from a boat, a surf board, a kayak, so or any other platform. If you see a jellyfish, we're very interested in hearing about it. So what kind of information are we looking for? Well, we're looking for date, the location, and how many jellyfish you saw. So you see 1, 2, 3, or 4, or else, you know, maybe sometimes you see so many that's difficult to count. So an approximate number is really useful. So did you see somewhere between 11 and 50, or 51 to 100, or was it greater than 500? So that kind of information is really, really important. So we're talking about the Big Jellyfish Hunt Facebook page, but obviously we've partnered up with the National Biodiversity Data Centre as well. And what we'd like you to do as well is log your observations on the National Biodiversity Data Centre jellyfish page. And so, you know, you can simply type in NBDC jellyfish page and you will get this page here, and you can see this is where you can put your name in, your details, the exact location, and describe the jellyfish that you saw, and also submit a jellyfish picture. So it'd be great if you could do both. So what can we actually learn from your observations? Well, I'm just going to give you 2 really nice examples to illustrate the type of information that we can gather from your observations. So over the last 10 years, we've actually described previously undescribed trophic interactions. What do we mean by that? So we've described how different animals feed on jellyfish. You know, I mentioned earlier that we know that sea turtles, not a fish species, feed on jellyfish. But here are some wonderful photographs of different organisms feeding on jellyfish on the seabed. So we have a snake locks anemone here feeding on a crystal jellyfish, a photograph by Deirdre Greer. Then we have a picture here from Nigel Mitre, where shown a velvet swimming crab feeding on a moon jellyfish, and then a picture here on the right from Ken Sullivan just showing 2 starfish feeding on a moon jellyfish as well. So all of these, we didn't know this until the photographs, until these photographs were sent in, that these animals feed on our jellyfish species. So you help us kind of complete those food webs, understand what's happening in our coastal seas. But what else can we learn from your observations? Well, many of you may know that we've seen over the last couple of years, we've been seeing unprecedented numbers of Portuguese man-o-war, and from our Big Jellyfish Hunt Facebook page, we know that this is new. This is something different because, you know, really we've been recording jellyfish strandings and abundances since about really 2004. We've been collecting information like this, and rarely will we see a Portuguese man-o-war. But in the last 5 years, every October, we've had thousands, well, hundreds to thousands of Portuguese man-o-war washing up on our beaches. And we've 2 wonderful photographs here illustrating that. So, you know, we're actually documenting from working with you guys and you sending in all this information. We're able to see that our seas are actually changing. Exactly what's causing these changes, well, that's a different thing, and we're trying to establish that. But clearly, warming seas are probably at play here. So really, that's it. I kind of give you a kind of brief overview of what the Big Jellyfish Hunt page is. So please visit us on facebook.com/ecogel, and you can check out some wonderful photographs. This is another, there's a picture of a juvenile compass jellyfish that we got earlier this year. So, but please just submit your sightings. But we also, and it'd be great if you could like our page, but also don't forget we've just got a new Plankton Club website that has been set up as well now, and that's where you can learn a bit about some of the other smaller types of jellyfish. But you can also learn about the plankton in our seas and the diversity of plankton. So there's a page about the diversity of plankton, but you can also track how our seas are changing through the months, and you can see the abundance of copepods. This is a little copepod here, and you can see how copepods change through time. So like in May, so this month, or well, just a month just gone, we've nearly 25,000 copepods per cubic meter in some of our coastal seas. So that's it. So thanks for your attention, and please visit the Big Jellyfish Hunt Facebook page and submit any observation, any question, and hopefully we can help answer that. So thank you very much, and thanks to all the funding bodies, and thanks to all the people who have sent in observations already. Thank you.
So thanks to Tom Doyle there for explaining what the Big Jellyfish Hunt is all about. And again, if you've got any questions or queries for Tom, just leave them in the comments section below this video and we'll get to them and get you an answer as soon as we can. So the idea of the Rocky Shore Safari is quite a simple one, really. We take a stretch of local rocky shore, and what we want to do is survey it in a walkover survey, recording as many species as possible. But to help you along and to encourage you a bit, we have a tick list of 30 species. The Rocky Shore Safari Big 30. We're asking you to hunt for those, so turn over rocks, look under seaweed, have a good scour about on the seashore to try and find them. But we don't want you wandering all over the seashore because, let's face it, once you get started you may never return. So try and limit yourself by confining yourself to a section of shore that's about 10 metres across. So don't get too caught up on selecting out your 10 metres of shore. Just pick a nice area of rocky shore that gives you access all the way from the splash zone up here down to the water's edge over there, and pace out about 10 metres. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So you can just use the features to get a rough idea of what the width of your 10 metres looks like. It's easier than bringing sticks and tapes and all that kind of business. So just look at the rocks, pick out some unique rocks. So here I have a grass covered rock on one side with some sea pink growing on it, and over there, as I said, I have barnacle covered rocks just there. So that really denotes my 10 metre section. So I'm going to survey from here all the way down to the water's edge and see what I find. Once again, I'm going to look for the top 30, the big 30 species, but I'm going to record whatever I can record as I go along. So now we know where to go to report our whales, dolphins and porpoises, and where to go to report our jellyfish. But what about subtidally? What about beneath the sea? Who's recording what lies beneath? Well, we're joined now by Rory O'Callaghan of Seasearch Ireland, who's going to tell us about Seasearch, which is a volunteer citizen science, as is everything today, underwater biodiversity survey.
Hello, so we're delighted to be included in the National Biodiversity Data Centre's webinar series as part of World Ocean Day 2021. We're Seasearch Ireland, a voluntary group of divers and snorkelers who record the marine life all around them. And Seasearch's aims are to record information on marine habitats, species and the ecology of those species in Ireland's interior waters. And we do that by providing training in recording and identification skills to our volunteers. We do that with the help of experts in their various fields, be it seaweeds, sponges, mollusks or fish. And this allows our volunteers to collect high quality data that, once inputted and validated, can be made available through the Biodiversity Maps portal. And the ultimate goal of that is to provide the data so that informed decisions on the management and conservation of our inshore waters can be made. But perhaps more broadly than that, is to inform everyone of the magnificent wildlife on our shores waiting to be discovered and why that wildlife needs to be preserved. So, a brief history of Seasearch. Starting in Scotland in the 1980s, recording took place in the UK throughout the 1990s with the Marine Conservation Society running the show. The project really took off in 1999 when a steering committee was formed that ultimately secured national lottery funding. And then in 2013 that funding was used to hire a national coordinator to provide training and to help set up local search groups, which culminated in the formation of Seasearch Ireland in 2009. Seasearch recorders have been collecting records in Ireland since 2003, and in 2019 we passed the 54,000 record mark, which is significant because that was the number of records collected by the Biomar project in the 1990s and makes Seasearch the largest marine data set currently held by the National Biodiversity Data Centre. Though I suspect, or maybe fear, in a few years' time I may be looking anxiously over my shoulder at the Explore Your Shore project. So why is there a need to record in the marine environment? I'm sure other Ocean Day talks will cover more coherently and powerfully than me the various threats to the marine ecosystems, but just to do a quick list of the usual suspects, there's overfishing, there's bycatch, damaging fishing gear, which I'll touch on in a minute again, pollution, litter, power generation, climate change, and invasive species. And invasive species are an area that citizen science projects are uniquely placed to monitor, as they can provide a continuous recording effort that periodic dedicated surveys, while more detail, just can't. So an example of this is wakame, the Japanese kelp. This species was first recorded in Stratford Loch in 2012. It was then recorded in Carlingford Loch in 2014, and then down in Wexford in Kyle Key in 2016. It was then recorded in Dunleary Harbour by Seasearch divers from the Dokies Club in 2017, and then in 2020 Seasearch divers and divers from NUI Galway recorded in Greystones. So the species is obviously either spreading or far more widespread than currently thought. So one of the things we're looking for marine users as things open up is to keep an eye out for this species and to record and to inform either ourselves or the National Biodiversity Data Centre if you see it. And there's an identification sheet you can download from our website. But speaking of wild and wacky invasive species, an even more unusual discovery was made by Seasearch divers in 2018. So while diving in Balwallet, they discovered Laminaria ochroluca, or the golden kelp. This identification was subsequently confirmed by genetic analysis by scientists from NUI Galway and the University of Alabama at Birmingham. The population there consists of a small number of individuals in a single spot. This is the sort of thing that could never be detected by remote monitoring. You would really need the keen eyes of someone like Dr. Catherine Schoenrock in the water to see the species and notice there was something unusual about that, and then to go back and investigate. So that's a sort of a success of the Seasearch project. But unfortunately, the need for marine conservation has somewhat of a darker side. So if the idea that a picture has 1,000 words, I suppose videos should do an even better job than that. So this video shows Serpula vermicularis colony growing on a lobster pot at a site in Galway. Serpula vermicularis is a tube-forming polychaete worm that can form large reefs with the tubes growing on tubes, growing on tubes, growing on tubes until you get a magnificent structure like this. Now, it's interesting in some of the literature, you'll see that it says that these reefs will not form on rocks, but certainly at one of the sites in Galway, it is predominantly on rocks that you find this. So these worms effectively form cold water reefs that are home to a diverse range of sponges, brittle stars, echinoderms, crustaceans and fish. And these unique biogenic reefs are known from just 5 locations, so Loch Crane in Scotland, Torrento in Italy, and 3 sites in Galway. And so you can see from this second video the extent and the size of the reefs. This video was taken in 2012 in Killary Harbour in Galway. And you see these reefs can be up to 1 metre off the surface. That's muddy bottom in between, so they provide a hard substrate for like that, things like sponges and sea squirts to settle on. And then there's various nooks and crannies in them where you get things like top pot blennies, gobies, and even from the video you can see that there's all sorts of species of fish swimming around them. And so it is really effectively our own sort of cold water reef. And this, unfortunately, is the same area in 2018. So clearly extensive damage has been done by most likely fishing gear, probably scallop dredgers being dragged through there and tearing up the reef, damaging some of the remaining reef that's left behind, and stirring up an awful lot of sediment, which then settles on the remaining reef. And then you can see, while there is some live reef, the reef structures are almost completely overgrown with sea squirts and epiphytic algae. And indeed, this video looks far more like what myself and another Seasearch diver observed on a visit to Scotland and to Loch Crerne, where there has been also extensive damage to their circular reefs. But this sort of thing, without the regular monitoring that citizen science divers provide, it just wouldn't have been noticed. The last extensive study of circular vermicular reefs in Killary was done in the 1980s, by Dan mentioned. And I suppose the collecting the data and the need for conservation feeds into the idea of the designation of MPAs. And while there's still no legal framework in Ireland for the designation of these, Seasearch divers in the UK have had some notable successes, particularly at Lyme Bay and Devon, in helping drive the designation of MPAs. So that's the why. On to the how. So Seasearch training occurs at sort of 4 basic levels. Generally, people start off with the Seasearch Observer, which is straightforward and quick to complete. You can do it recording on as many dives as possible, and it's just a 1-day course with 5 qualification dives afterwards. It's basically a 2-page form. I like to think of it as equivalent to a birder's field book. It's something simple that you could fill out after you've returned from your dive. And once you practice, you can get very quick at filling in all the basic information on habitats and species that you need to. And particularly with the observer, what we're looking for is people to identify species to a taxonomic level that they're comfortable with. So if it's spider crab is all you can say about the species, we're more than happy to take that record. Now, the next really big step up is to become a Seasearch Surveyor. So this is people who either typically with marine recording experience or experienced observers. It requires a lot more time and experience to complete the form. It's typically something you have to plan beforehand and include as part of your dive plan. And the training involves a 2-day course plus the diving. So it's a 4-page sheet that requires detailed information on the habitat, on the site, on the substrate, and on the species present. And indeed, with this form, you have to know the Latin names, unfortunately, of all the species. And then after that, we run a lot of specialised workshops. Now, at the moment, these are all being run online. But so far this year, we've had a seaweed ID workshop. We've had an ID workshop on photo ID. We had a fish workshop. We looked at Galway's underwater biodiversity. David Wall came in and talked to us about Explore Your Shore projects, the Kelp Parks project. We had a talk on ocean literacy, and just recently we had a talk on sponge identification. And all of these recordings are available on our YouTube channel if you search for Seasearch Ireland. And these specialist talks then tend to feed into the specialist projects. So the 4 we're running at the moment are the sponge safari, assisting the work of Dr. Catherine Schoenrock of Galway on the Kelp Parks project, a sponge recording project, and then finally we'll be rolling out a Supula video monitoring project shortly. But I suppose just to give an example of one, the sponge safari is a very simple project. There's 6 sponges that we've identified that can be reliably identified visually in the field. So literally what we've done is we've prepared an identification sheet that you can download and or print. You'll probably have to laminate it if you're going to bring it near the water. And away you go and see can you identify these 6 species at your site, and then you can either submit it with your Seasearch records to us, or you can upload it with your photos of the species through the National Biodiversity Data Centre's mapping portal. But the project that we're really pushing at the moment is the National Marine Monitoring Scheme / adopted site. So there's 4 basic problems that all citizen science projects tend to have. Is you have uneven recording, people dive more in the summer. Uneven spatial coverage, people dive near where they live or they dive at night sites. They've uneven recording effort, which is people spend more time in the water during the summer, but also people can identify different things. And then you've got uneven detectability of species. So that's like something like a barn owl or a bat is a lot harder to see than a species that comes out during the day that is brightly coloured like a butterfly. But you can see from that video we just showed there that underwater you've got a whole different range of problems, because you can have something as massive as a firework or anything like that, and you don't see it until you're right on top of it. So what the National Marine Monitoring Scheme is, it's an effort-based recording scheme. So a similar recording scheme would be the Butterfly Monitoring Scheme run by the National Biodiversity Data Centre. So as part of the adopted site scheme, we use a roving diver technique, which is that you've got a list of 100 benchmark species which you're trying to find, and then you are literally trying to find those species on your dive. And then to standardise the recording effort, we're looking at the number of divers that were in the water, the duration, and then the max depth. And then we encourage people to do the same dive navigation every time, so that you're recording in the same areas. They do 5 dives a year: May, June, July, August and September. And that means that it has to be a site that's easily accessible during summer months. But it's a very replicable and easily transferable course, and it's a lot more collaborative for people who don't have a major interest in filling out forms in the club can still get involved in the club. So at the moment we have a large number of sites spread out over the country, but we're still always looking to recruit more divers, and particularly we like to hear from some divers in Clare and Kerry. And I suppose the results that we're hoping to get from the site, from the scheme, is to be able to track changes to sites, to be able to record changes in the marine environment, to be able to estimate species distribution, because at the moment with the Seasearch data, all we have is presence or sort of a pseudo absence, whereas with this scheme, when you are looking for a specific species at a specific site and you don't record it, then it's more likely that the species is actually absent from the site than merely it wasn't recorded. And then, as we illustrated with our videos, you can look at the effects of local disturbance, and then this data is all validated and then uploaded to the mapping portal. And then in years gone by, we've done a yearly report so that participants can compare their site to other sites. So that's our schemes, our lot. So I'll just sort of finish up really quickly by repeating again that all of our workshops are on our YouTube channel for people who want to view them. You can contact us through email at seasearchireland@gmail.com. We're fairly active on Facebook, and we're also active on Instagram, because if any part of citizen science was made for Instagram, it has to be underwater recording and all of the wonderful photos that our recorders take. And I suppose that's me done. Are there any questions?
So it's always easy to forget that actually beneath the water, beside our shore, there's a whole other world literally awaiting discovery. And it's good to hear from Rory there about Seasearch Ireland and about how even that hidden world is being recorded by citizen scientists. If you have any questions or queries for Rory, leave them in the comments box below the video and we'll get to them during the week. Of course, it's easy to forget that underwater world exists, and it's as diverse as any terrestrial landscape, with different habitats and different seascapes under the waves. One of the most important habitats we have around the Irish coast are kelp parks or kelp forests. These are home to a whole range of fish species, including commercial fish species, and are a permanent home to a myriad of different invertebrates and seaweed species. Catherine Schoenrock at NUIG is conducting a study of kelp forests around the Irish coast, looking at where they are and indeed studying their genetic diversity. And Catherine joins us now to explain what the project Kelp Res is all about.
Hey, hi, I'm Kate Schoenrock, and I work at National University of Ireland, Galway, on a picture that's a project, not a picture, that investigates kelp forest ecology and different metrics of kelp ecosystem resilience in Ireland. So I'm just going to kind of briefly talk about that. We have a citizen science kind of recording slate that we'd like recreational divers to use to document kelp forest presence, as well as the different components that they're finding within the kelp forest. So different species of echinoderms like the common urchin or the spiny sea star, but also just like density of kelps and so on and so forth. So I'll talk about that in just a second. So if you guys are familiar with kelp forests, this is laminary hypogrea in this picture. We are pretty interested in the resilience of these ecosystems, and we're defining that as the capacity for them to recover from a large disturbance such as a storm or a heat wave and maintain normal ecological function. So host the great diversity of species that they do in their current state. So when we've done studies on this, over 313 species or taxonomic units have been found inhabiting these kelp forests, and that's just the stuff that we can see with our, with our eyes. We're really concerned about different stressors. So in the short term, we're talking about marine heat waves, infrequent kelp removal, and annual storms. But in the long term, we're talking about climate change, whether that means ocean warming or the breakdown of the Gulf Stream, meaning ocean cooling, and really cooling. Also more frequent storms and repeated mechanical harvest of these ecosystems. They take a long time to recover, over 5 years, and even longer for the community to get restored. So that means all of the different players like fish and echinoderms coming back to inhabit those locations. This is kind of an example of how communities can shift. So right now we're predicting that communities are going to start shifting poleward as the oceans warm. In the past, during the last glacial maximum, kelp forests have retreated southwards towards Morocco and Portugal. But in their present state, they're actually starting to retreat poleward towards the Arctic because the waters are getting warmer. So they pretty much disappeared from the Iberian coastline. Whereas the present day is this upper right corner. So they're just retreating from the Iberian coastline and up the French coastline of Brittany. So what we are trying to do is look at the historical distribution of these kelp forests in Ireland using herbaria, citizen science records from the 1900s, very early 1900s, and just kind of writings from the 1800s, just to see whether they've actually changed their distribution in Ireland at all. Turns out it's very hard to get a lot of data from this because people generally will only record kelp that they see. So they saw one individual. We don't know if it was alive, if it was underwater, if it was on the beach. We don't know if there was a whole kelp forest. So it's actually kind of tricky to look at distribution of species using this kind of data. We're interested in the evolutionary mechanisms of resilience that might be found in kelp. So that means the genetic structure and connectivity across populations in Ireland, especially interested in areas of genetic diversity, like rich genetic diversity, that might be potential areas that we need to look at conserving. We're also looking at the ecological resilience. So whether or not there's a bank of microalgal stages in the biofilms, the benthic habitat in kelp forests that might facilitate recovery of these ecosystems after a disturbance. And this is very similar to what you might find in grassland habitats after a fire. So we don't know whether or not it exists, and that's what we're hoping to target with our research project. And then lastly, we're really interested in creating monitoring tools. So that includes remote sensing things like using satellite data, but also the recreational diver records, and that's the dive slate or the template that I kind of mentioned earlier. And that feeds back into historical data sets, hopefully providing a better idea of kelp ecosystem distribution, not just the kelp itself. So if we look at historical distribution, it's all over the coastline, but there's fewer communities that you might find in the east. And if you've ever been to Dublin swimming or anything like that, you'll know that it's a very high sediment area. The water's pretty mercury. These kind of communities like hard bedrock and moderate exposure. So it makes sense that they're not really found on the East Coast. Earliest record is on Hookhead, so down here. And the most records that we've gotten, or most years of recording that we've gotten for any sites, is 6 years in a row. Again, so these kind of data kind of fall short in the sense that like they're not you're not getting a lot of information. You're not getting one site recorded more than once very often. So the areas of the most dense recording are kind of centered around higher education institutions, so UCC and NUI Galway, and that's also kind of a shortcoming in these data sets. If we look at population genetics, what we're finding from a preliminary study is that genetic diversity of populations, including the novel alleles in these communities, are highest in the Southwest, and this is actually predicted to be a glacial refugia from the last glacial maximum. So we'd expect it to have the highest genetic diversity or allelic richness. Populations are not connected very well. Of course, you can see there's a lot of coastline between these samples here, but they're not their reproductive propagules are not moving very far across sites. So there's very little mixing. This is just a graph showing you isolation by distance. So what we're working on right now is we've collected 40 additional samples from 40 additional populations, and that should give us a better idea of exactly how connected the populations are. It's a finer scale kind of project, and you know, kind of really define whether or not this region is actually the most diverse and what part of the Southwest is the most diverse. To look at the bank of microscopic kelp stages, we've taken a three-pronged approach, and it's actually quite a cool project. So we have an in situ experiment. It was located in 2 locations, so in Derrynane down in Kerry and also in Carrow in Connemara. We had these kind of cement blocks in 3 transect lines across the kelp forest, in the inner kelp forest, middle, and the outer kelp forest. And this just gives you varying levels of kelp cover and also different numbers of adults. So on the outer reaches of the kelp forest, these are going to be highly disturbed. So you might have younger individuals, a thinner canopy cover. And in the middle of the kelp forest is going to be the highest amount of light cover, right? And maybe more older individuals in there. Within these blocks, we have these settlement tiles to capture kelp recruitment, as well as data loggers to tell us the light and temperature. And we've left some in for 1 year to collect reproductive cycles throughout the year, and some were taken out seasonally, so spring, summer, autumn, winter. And this should give us an information about how often kelp are reproducing, how those propagules settle, and whether or not they live to reproduce here seasonally. But then on the annual slides, we're getting an idea of really like, we see some kelps grow out, but are these spores banking? Are these microscopic stages banking? We've also collected bedrock and brought it into an aquarium to see what would grow out from these natural biofilms. So things that we didn't have to incubate for over a year in situ. We're just looking at what grows out of a biofilm once you remove that canopy cover, because light is quite important for these kind of species that get their energy that way. And then lastly, we're taking a genetic approach. We're meta-barcoding these benthic biofilms, and that gives us an idea of presence, absence of different species in these habitats. So you can see that on this rock, there are no kelps, but if we get kelp DNA, it indicates that there are microscopic stages there, and potentially this bank kelp stages. So this is just a nice little video kind of showing you the experiment in situ. You can see that there are a few kelps kind of growing on the cement, but also on the microscope slides. So on the right, you have our annual slides, and on the left, that would be our seasonal slides. So you can see that the annual, they create a large kind of maybe microscopic, but also grown out to a microscopic community. So lastly, I'm going to talk about monitoring tools, and this is actually a really important aspect of our research, because while we can spend 2 years of a grant cycle really delving into these deeper topics, kelp forests are here for hopefully for a while, right? And we really need to kind of understand what their health, like what their state is, and sort of track that over time, so we know how, you know, if our fisheries are failing, why is that? Maybe it's because kelp's not there, so on and so forth. So what we've done is we've created for recreational divers this kind of dive slate that allows you to record the dominant kelp species, the density of the different kelps that you find, as well as maybe some non-native species if you do see them. They're quite common, or they're becoming more common along our coastline. And then we have some of the more common kelp forest inhabitants. So you have your cotton spinner, all that sort of stuff. And we're just looking for an idea about like the estimated abundance of these species and the depth of where you're finding everything. And you can access this either through email via me, or there is an online form that you can access with this QR code. The other monitoring tool that we're really working on is using satellite data to kind of get an idea of where kelps are found. So if you use satellite, if you use the reflectance spectra of laminary hyperborea or kelps in general, what that means is the amount of light that's bouncing off the blade back towards space, you can get an idea. The red-green ratio can give you an idea of where it is. So our colleague Erin Golden has kind of used bathymetry data from the Marine Institute, combined it with this PlanetScope data, and created kind of a map of where kelps are found. So if he kind of filters out everything from the lowest astronomical tide to 10 meters depth, you get this kind of pattern where the red is the kelps, and that's relatively accurate. But actually, if you go up 5 meters, so intertidal to 10 meters depth, you actually get a better kind of estimate of where the kelps are, but you're also capturing your intertidal species here. If you try and expand it deeper than 10 meters depth, you really get a lot of noise in the data, and that's just because reflectance in the water column is going to be it's going to give you an inaccurate signal the deeper you go, because you're losing a lot of your light anyways, that's transmitted to that depth. All right, so lastly, I'm just going to kind of stop on that. We hope to be able to present a picture of historical distribution with our tools and continue monitoring kelp ecosystems with everyone's help. But we'd also hope to provide an evolutionary and ecological description of the characteristics kelp species have to maintain their populations, to be resilient to things like climate change and just general disturbance from anthropogenic causes. I would like to just comment on this link down here. This is a GoFundMe for Seasearch Ireland, who works intensively with us on this project. We're trying to get some money to continue subtitle monitoring, so if you'd like to contribute, it would be amazing. We'd pick any help we can get with that. And so that's it, and I'd love to answer questions at some point in time as it goes on.
And once again, if you have any questions for Catherine about Kelp Res, leave them in the comments section below and we'll get to them during the week for you. Well, seaweeds are a very diverse group. Indeed, there's over 500 species recorded from around the Irish coast to date. But not all seaweeds around the Irish coast have always been here. Some have been recent introductions. They've been brought in shellfish seed for aquaculture farms, or they've been brought in the hulls of ships as ballast water, or indeed attached to ships, growing on the hulls. Once they take root, then they have the potential to be very problematic to native species. Quite often they've no native predators here, and they can also outcompete native seaweed species. Now, while some seaweeds from far-flung places have been here for a very long time, others are more recent arrivals. One of those, a good example, is wireweed, which has taken hold around the coast really in the last 20 to 30 years and has the potential to absolutely crowd out native seaweed species. So what do we do when these seaweeds take hold? What do we do about invasive seaweeds? Can we get rid of them? And if we can't get rid of them, do they have any commercial potential? Well, Marianella Zonola from the National University of Ireland in Galway is having a look at this issue. She's having a look at what the potential for commercial use of invasive seaweeds is, and she wants your help in mapping invasive seaweeds around the Irish coastline.
Hello, my name is Marianella Zanola, and I'm here to talk to you about a project that I'm conducting in UIG Galway in the Algal Bioscience Department. The project is called Valorization of Invasive Seaweed and is funded by the AXA Research Fund. So why did this project emerge? Well, there is an environmental problem that we are facing now that it's called biological invasions. So biological invasions can be done by any species, animal, or plants, and they consist in the arrival, survival, successful reproduction and dispersal of an alien species in a new ecosystem. Okay, the important part here is that an alien species are species that are non-native or non-indigenous to the place. And the introduction of this species is directly or indirectly related to human activities. So we are causing it. Now, this is a problem because biological invasions are one of the main threats to biodiversity, and they are increased now by globalization. This is because there are more introduction pathways. There is more aquaculture, more pleasure boats, more trade, more ships. So what is the consequence of this problem? Well, we can detect negative impacts at many levels. At the species levels, what the biological invasions, and specifically by seaweed, they decrease the number of species and their abundance. They can also cause genetic pollution by interbreeding with native communities. At community level, they alter the structure by modifying this number of species and abundance. Now, bear in mind that seaweeds are ecosystem engineers and are the first link of the trophic nets. So if we change the base, the impacts can be seen in different levels. At the ecosystem level, we can lose the services that we obtain from these ecosystems. They can also modify the landscape and make changes in evolution. At the social level, biological invasions can pose threats to human health by introducing diseases and the release of toxins, and also as a source of food. At the economical level, well, the species of commercial interest might be affected. Tourism, health services, and trade can also be affected by this problem. So there are common features of invasive seaweeds. Each case is particular, of course, but they do share some characteristics. They grow really, really fast. They are able to tolerate wide environmental conditions of temperature, salinity, and light intensity. They possess multiple copies of DNA. They have a lot of toxic substances which they use to inhibit the growth of another seaweed or to avoid predation. They have mechanisms for rapid dispersals, and they lack predators in the native ecosystems. So using few of these features of the invasive seaweed, such as the rapid growth and the presence of toxic substances, our project arises to see if we can give a value into this biomass that is created, because they do grow a lot and they can dominate the amount of biomass that we can encounter in an ecosystem. And these toxic substances are called secondary metabolites, and they can be targets of commercial use. So why was this project necessary? Well, the number of species, as I was saying, is rising. This doesn't mean that every alien species will become invasive, but we have to keep a good eye. There is a more than 15-year gap in the knowledge of which species, how much of them, and where are they in Ireland. And also, can we turn this problem, this environmental problem, into an opportunity? Biological invasions can affect the economy of people that depend on fishing or in aquaculture. So can we make this loss be a benefit? For this, we pose 3 objectives. One is the elaboration of an updated map of invasive seaweed in Ireland. For this, we will be doing this by 2 means. One is sampling service, and the second one is citizen science. And this is where all of you become very important. The second one is the chemical profiling of these invasive populations and their bioactivity. This is because we have to find if there's something within them, or this toxic substance that I was saying, that we can use to make a profit. And the other one, the last object is about sourcing. So how to obtain this biomass that is needed for industrial purposes. So for that, I will evaluate the harvesting versus aquaculture. So what can you do? What you can do is go to the beach and take a walk. For this, for your participation in this project, I made a few identification sheets that can be found in the Explore Your Shore website. There you will see, if you click on the project of valorization of invasive species, you will find some information about the project and ID guides of the invasive seaweed that we are after. So using these ID sheets, you can go to the beach and see if you find them. These are all the things. You can download it in your phone and have them with you. When you see these species in the same place, you can use a form to put your record. You have to take a picture, and using a form, you can record the presence of these species. Also, there are other portals in Biodiversity Ireland. There is a part that is specific to record the species. Or in Invasive Species Ireland, you can also report the sighting. Thank you very much for your attention and for your collaboration. And thank you very much.
And once again, if you have any questions for Marianella, leave them in the comments section below the video and we'll get to them during the week. It's important to remember when you're out on the shore that there's a whole other world right below you. This world is occupied by a whole range of different invertebrates, some of them living beneath the rocks and stones, but some of them buried into the very sediment you're walking on. One of those species is the king ragworm. That's actually a species, although it's probably very common, we know very little about its distribution. There's very few records because it doesn't show itself on the surface. So maybe you're a bait digger, or maybe you're just inquisitive, but perhaps you could be the kind of people who Niall Muller from the National University of Ireland in Galway is looking for. He wants people to go out on shore and to have a look for the king ragworm. And he's here today to introduce his project, Seasearch.
Hi everyone, my name is Niall. I'm a researcher with the Aquaculture Nutrition Research Unit in NUI Galway. Today, for World Ocean Day, I'll be talking about our citizen science project, Seasearch. The project is brand new, so we can't share any findings just yet, but what we can do is tell you what the project is about, and if you're interested, how to get involved. The aim of the project is to record sightings of king ragworm, scientific name Biodiversity, around the Irish coast. So why is this important? King ragworm have a vital role in marine ecosystems where they act as both drivers and regulators of diversity in benthic communities. Their influence arises through the disturbance of the seabed, the cycling of the nutrients and interactions with other species. They're omnivorous, so they feed on deposits that have settled on the seafloor, on algae, or as predators for smaller invertebrates, including other polychaetes, crustaceans like amphipods, mollusks like clams, cockles, mussels, and echinoderms like starfish and urchins. They're also very important prey species for bird and fish populations. Through these different energy flows, they determine the community structure and thereby the diversity of the ecosystem. In simple terms, king ragworm and other polychaetes are an essential link passing nutrients both up and across the marine food web. The reason why we created this project is because, for the most part, we don't know where king ragworms can be found or how healthy the populations are. This is the weird thing. It's uncommon in science to have such poor data on the distribution of a species, especially when the answer is lying just under your feet. We know of some locations based off of reports from anglers, bait diggers and fish and tackle shops, but very few are recorded or confirmed. This slide really illustrates the scale of the problem. Different data sets have different icons, but as you can see, most of Ireland is undocumented for this species. Also, the data sets are quite old, some going as far back as 1976, and where little data is found, it can often be lost within a much larger data set or survey, so we can't really tell straight away the exact locations, the dates, or where the data came from. If we took Northern Ireland as an indicator, which seems to be better documented as it's part of the UK, we should see king ragworm populations all down the south and east coast where conditions are suitable. Looking at northwest Europe, we can clearly see something doesn't add up, especially when you consider many other ragworm species found around Europe are also spread throughout Ireland. But why is this important? Well, exploring where king ragworm is found and documenting this species could actually provide some really interesting insights. For example, the biology and life cycle of the species, Ireland's water quality or its oceanography, or the impact on the ecosystem where the species is either present or absent. Insights which have previously gone unnoticed and undiscovered. Basically, what makes Ireland suitable or unsuitable depending on where they're found. If any of you have a theory on why this species will be found in one location over another, we would love to hear it. Tell us what you think and leave a comment down below. We've learned through speaking with anglers that the populations don't seem to occur around the west coast of Ireland. Nobody has tested this theory, so we think it would be very interesting to see if they're right, but also the discovery of king ragworm on the west coast could completely change our point of view. But taking a step back for a minute, what is a king ragworm and how do we find them? King ragworm belong to the phylum of 9,000 annelids, or segmented worms, of which 8,000 are found in the class of polychaetes. All of these pictured here are all polychaetes. They're completely unlike worms you can find in your back garden. This is the polychaete known as the king ragworm. Poly means many, and chaeta is a name for their bristles made of chitin. They kind of look like hairs poking out of the parapodia. The parapodia is this area here, highlighted with a dashed line. They're kind of like stumpy little feet. There are 23 species of polychaete in the families of Nerididae and Nephtidae, which occur around northwest Europe, with many commonly referred to as ragworm, the most spectacular of which is the king ragworm. Some can reach up to 1 metre in length at places where their reproduction is slowed, like the Menai Strait in Wales. They can grab prey by turning their gut inside out, which pushes their pincers forward. These pincers are super strong, but they're also lightweight. And studying their structure could actually change how we make aerospace parts. They're unchanged for millions of years. Ragworm are the closest we can get to the origin of the human eye. It consists simply of a light-sensitive cell and a pigment cell. They use their lungs to walk. King ragworm actually breathe through their feet. Their parapodia, which they use to move, have lots of blood vessels running through them, which allows the oxygen to transfer from the seawater to their blood. So, assuming you still want to find one, you can spot a king ragworm in one of two ways: either buried in the sediment or swimming freely in the water column or on the surface. If you see a king ragworm swimming in the water column or one washed up on the beach, you can report a casual sighting, which will tell us that a population or a spawning ground is nearby. Or for those of you who really want to get stuck in and discover a lost king ragworm population, you can choose to go down to the shore with some wellies and a garden fork and find out what's really hiding in the sediment. When in the sediment, they are completely unmistakable to other ragworms. As adults, they're quite large, and their orange parapodium give the animal a wavy appearance, or fluffy appearance, but not cute fluffy though, far from it. The most obvious species identifier of a king ragworm is the shape of its parapodia, which separates it from all other ragworm. The dorsal or top surface of its feet, known as a ligule, are large and leaf-like. The image on the left is parapodia under a microscope. When the animal is ready to reproduce, it needs to swim to its spawning grounds. So to help with this, it goes through a transformation known as epitoky, where the digestive system completely disintegrates and the ligules become much larger, acting as flippers. This change is linked to the temperature of the water, the phase of the moon, and the photo period, or how long daylight lasts. This transformation usually occurs around spring in Ireland. Other species you may find are white ragworm and harbour ragworm. Juvenile or young king ragworm are fully grown harbour ragworm are very similar in appearance. I think if I remember correctly, the top one is a harbour and the bottom one is a king ragworm. And I can only tell the difference by looking at their parapodia under a microscope. As adults, their parapodia is much more obvious, but when they're this side, it's a small difference. Because we need a microscope to tell this difference, for this reason, we can't accept sightings of king ragworm when they're this small. If I was looking at photos, or someone in Biodiversity was looking at photos, there's just no way we could tell the difference. But with your help, we can build a database full of your sightings. This can then be used to tell us loads of different things about the species and the marine environment where they're found. All of this data could then improve ecological literacy, i.e. what we know about our environment. It can encourage local stewardship of the habitat, where local people look after local resources. But to do this, we need informed policy on how we can better use the environment. For example, it would probably be a good idea if we could protect the spawning grounds of this species. This way, continued recruitment of juvenile king ragworm not only supports the ecosystem, it also continues to provide resources to the locals who use it. For more details on how to get involved, we've created a guide online in the Seasearch project page. You can search the URL or scan the QR code, which will bring you to the Explore Your Shore website. But remember, even if you don't find anything, we'd still like to hear about it. You can share your adventure with us online through our social media platforms. But before you go, bit of a safety talk. Before you go out on a search, always remember to look out for your own safety. It's super easy to get yourself into a dangerous position. Check local tides and the weather forecast. Try to go out 1 or 2 hours before low tide and leave before low tide starts to rise, because it's too easy to get caught out. The tide won't rise evenly and channels may fill up faster than you realise, and before you know it, behind you is deep water and you're trapped. So never let yourself get into that position. Always keep an eye on where the water is and leave before it's too late. Never go out in bad warning or during weather warnings for obvious reasons. Tell someone where you're going and when you're due back. Also, never go alone. Bring a buddy with you or go with a group. It just adds to the experience. Bring a fully charged phone. This way, not only can you take some photos of whatever you find, if you get into difficulties, you can call 112 or 999 and ask for the Coast Guard. Might be an idea to wear wellies or boots. It's quite messy down on the shore and you don't know what you're going to find. Always be careful where you step and check your footing ahead of you. An area which might look like hard sand because it's turned out to be a hole filled with water. You go step in it, you could trip, you could sink, all sorts could happen. You could get stuck on the beach. So just don't let it happen. If you bring a walking stick or even check the ground, stab the ground with your walking stick or with your garden fork, just to make sure that wherever you're walking ahead of you is hard and it's safe to walk across. Never enter mud flats. It's too easy to become stuck and you might get yourself into trouble. Never enter private property without an owner's permission, and keep away from restricted and protected areas. This is just kind of general stuff. It's pretty simple. Basically, don't put yourself in any danger, especially just for hunting these guys. It's not worth you getting into trouble. Always keep away from dangerous areas, drops, deep water, cliffs, dunes, all that kind of stuff. Just be safe while you're out there. And that's it. Thanks for listening, and if you do choose to go out, happy hunting.
And one final time, if you have any questions for Niall or any questions for any of our speakers today, just leave them in the comments section down here underneath the video, and we'll answer those questions, or I'll ask our experts to answer those questions during the week. And so just keep checking back and all of your queries will be answered. So thanks once again for joining us here on World Oceans Day for this virtual YouTube webinar. We hope you've dipped in and out of it and you've enjoyed the content that we provided. We'd ask you then to head out onto the shore. Hopefully you get some lovely weather like today and you'll be able to go out and start exploring your shore. Give it a go. Try one of the Explore Your Shore surveys, try one of our partner surveys. If you see something unusual and you want to record it, visit exploreyourshore.ie and look at the different tabs and see what section, what survey your particular species fits best under and record under that survey. All of that data will eventually make its way back to the National Biodiversity Data Centre, where you, the citizen science recorder, and the wider public can view it and explore it and see what Ireland's marine biodiversity looks like. So thanks once again for joining us, and we'll see you out on the shore.